Good evening. Welcome to a community conversation. Know your child's basic educational rights through a social justice lens. We are Marjorie Jess and Gretchen Eamon, co-directors of the support network. This is our logo, and that's who we are. At the support network, we have our own lived experience raising a child or children with a social, emotional, or mental health challenge. We work with families on how to best advocate for their children through the many systems they find themselves in, including the educational system. Though we have had extensive training in special education, we are not educational advocates. We are supports for parents and guardians who want to learn how best to advocate for their children's needs. And I will add that between Gretchen and I, we have, believe it or not, 50 years of experience between working for the support network and our former lives working in special education. So we've been around for a while.
All right, I guess I'll take this one. You want me to take this one, Marjorie? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so social justice and equity in our educational system. So the question is, why is it important to talk about social justice and equity in special education? A few highlights that we have are because the educational system is built on years of inequities and racial disparities. Children of color, those living in poverty or with emotional, behavioral, or mental health needs have higher rates of discipline, suspension, academic failure, and dropping out of school. Children in these categories are very often overlooked for special education and instead unfairly punished for behaviors that are the result of an undiagnosed disability. This is often referred to as the school to prison pipeline. The school to prison pipeline is the practice of pushing kids with behavioral challenges out of school and into the juvenile justice system. Children of color are disciplined more often and more harshly than their white counterparts and for the same infractions. Strict zero tolerance discipline policies are one factor that is contributing to the pipeline. Other factors include shrinking school budgets, police in schools, and systemic racism. Many of the children that go down the pipeline have histories of abuse, neglect, poverty, and undiagnosed disabilities, and would be better served by additional educational and/or counseling services. This last statistic is one that actually really blew my mind. 83% of children that enter the pipeline are functionally illiterate. We can and must do better for all of these underserved children.
Before I begin the when is a student eligible for special education services, I also want Crystal Duval to introduce herself briefly.
Sorry, Crystal.
It's okay. Hi, I am Crystal Duval. I am a parent who is going through the IEP system with my own children right now, and I am peer ambassador with Value in Our Children.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the big question, when is a student eligible for special education services? Before we can even talk about when they're eligible, we need to talk about what actually is special education. Both state, and you have here the legal state regulation, and federal law, otherwise known as IDEA, you'll hear that name, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. Children with disabilities that affect their educational progress have rights to academic and behavioral programming designed to meet their unique needs. They only are eligible for special education services if they meet certain criteria. So, to be eligible for special education, a student between the ages of 3 through 21 must have one or more of the following impairments, and the impairment must interfere with their ability to make effective progress in the general education curriculum. The list here is autism, developmental delay, intellectual impairment, sensory impairment, which would include hearing and vision, neurological impairment, emotional impairment, communication impairment, physical impairment, health impairment, which includes ADHD, and specific learning disability. In addition, it also must be determined that a child requires what's called specialized instruction and or related services, such as a speech and language therapy program, in order to access general curriculum. The big question is, who can refer a student for special education evaluation? There's a lot of misunderstanding around this. However, school districts have the duty to identify and assess the needs of children who may be eligible for special education services. This is called child find. Parents have the right to request an evaluation if their child is struggling academically and or with social emotional development. Don't ever buy into a school saying to you, well, academically they're doing well if they're being pulled out of the classroom several times a day or being suspended. They are not making progress with their social and emotional development. This request cannot be denied by the district. Be sure to put all your requests in writing for special education evaluation. In fact, any person working with a child in either a professional position or caregiving role may also request special ed evaluation. What types of evaluations and assessments must the school district perform? And here is our list. The school district must evaluate a child in all areas related to their suspected disability. This may include, as you can see, a psychological evaluation, an educational evaluation, a health evaluation, a home evaluation, assessments by classroom teachers, an autism screening or evaluation, speech and language screening or evaluation, an occupational therapy screening and evaluation, physical therapy screening and evaluation, a functional behavioral assessment, which you'll often hear referred to as an FBA, and any other assessment which is related to the child's suspected disability. Parents should carefully review the consent forms before signing and add either assessment or delete assessments that they do feel are necessary. These consent forms, I hope we're not missing a slide. When a parent requests a special education evaluation, consent forms must be sent to the parents within 5 working days. As I said, you can add additional assessments or delete assessments that you feel are not necessary. The school district must have a signed consent form by the parent before it conducts any evaluations. Be sure, Gretchen?
Yes, may I say something? I just want to let people know that this is often where we see the ball get dropped. The parents don't realize that the testing isn't started, and so I've had parents, tell me, well, 6 months ago they said it was going to be done, but they never got the consent. So it's important to get that consent. Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine, and sign it. And as we say, the consent forms must be signed by the parent and returned to the school before the school can conduct any evaluations. We suggest that you get a physically stamped copy of the consent form that you have signed, bring it to the school and get a receipt for it. Or if you send it by email, that the school confirms receipt of your signed consent form through email. timelines. Okay, this can get confusing, but this is the basic standard. And you do have to understand that as much as we wish and hope schools follow these precisely, there will be times where they're not followed. And we can talk more about that later, what to do when that happens. But when a student is, oh, here it is. When a student is referred for a special education evaluation, school district must send a parental consent form within 5 business days of receiving the referral. Testing again will not be started until the school receives the signed consent form. Very important. Testing must be completed within 30 days from the day, there's 30 school days rather, from the day that the consent form is received by the school. A meeting to determine eligibility must be convened within 45 days from when the consent was received by the school. Parents have a right to copies of all evaluations 2 days prior to the eligibility meeting. A written request for these should be made as soon as possible. If these are not provided, a parent has the right to request that the meeting be rescheduled. We really feel it's important that parents and guardians get copies of these evaluations and read them. Even if they don't understand everything that's being said, they'll get some sense of what occurred during their child's testing and what the findings were. If the student is eligible and IEP is written, the team must reconvene at least one time each year to review and update the IEP. The child must be reevaluated to determine continued eligibility every 3 years. So those are the basic timelines.
Marjorie,
The
you want me to-
eligibility determination meeting, Gretchen, do you want to take over on this part?
Well, I was going to suggest that I did because you've been reading an awful lot. So I will take over.
Okay.
All right. So by law, special education teams must consist of the following individuals: the student's parents or legal guardians, at least one regular education teacher, at least one special education teacher, a school official who has the authority to commit resources, a professional who's qualified to interpret and explain test results. So in other words, if a psychologist did some testing, a psychologist needs to be there to explain those test results. The student is invited must be invited if they're age 14 or older. And any person the school district or parents wishes to invite. This includes an advocate, outside provider, including transitional service agencies, or any professional working with a student or any other supportive individual who has special knowledge or expertise about the student. At a student's initial eligibility determination meeting, the team will review the evaluations that were performed and ask the following questions. Does the child have one or more of the following types of disabilities? Those were the ones we saw in slide 8. Is the student making effective progress? And it's important that you know that this is not just academically, but also socially and emotionally. And is this lack of progress a result of the student's disability? And then the last portion of this, does the student require specially designed instruction in order to make effective progress? Or does the student require related services such as occupational therapy in order to access the general curriculum? If the answer to all 3 questions is yes, then the student is eligible for special education and an individual education plan is developed. An individual education plan is essentially the roadmap that the district will follow to ensure that the unique needs of your child are being addressed. The IEP must address these key areas: the general curriculum, such as reading or math, extracurricular activities. Does your child need help accessing these activities, sports, clubs, that type of thing? And other non-academic needs, such as the need for social emotional support. The IEP must have specific information about the student and is divided into the following parts. The present levels of achievement and functional performance, also known as PLEP A and B, must provide information about your child's present level of academic performance, as well as their present level of functional performance. Areas such as communication, activities of daily living, social skills, and behavior. It must include the child's strengths, as well as an explanation of how the disability affects a child in the general education curriculum. This is the foundation upon which the IEP will be written, so it's important that it be comprehensive. Parents, you know your children the best, so make sure that you are contributing to this completely. You know what their strengths are. Make sure that they're represented here. And also there's an area for the parent and or the student concerns. Even the youngest child, if you ask them, what do you hope will happen for you in school, or what do you like about school, or what do you not like about school, you can bring that forward in the meeting. And they have a right to have their voice heard. Marjorie, do you want to take over here?
No.
Can I interrupt with
yeah,
a quick
Rachel
question?
has a question.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I'm getting some chats from Facebook and YouTube. And so there's a question on Facebook. Is this only in Massachusetts? Is what you're describing only in Massachusetts?
Well, do you want me to take that,
Go
Gretchen?
ahead. Yeah, I need
There is federal law under IDEA, as I explained earlier, and there is also state regulations. We are very fortunate in Massachusetts to have very strong, comprehensive special education laws that outweigh federal law. So in those cases, you pay attention to Massachusetts state law. Every state, all 50 states have their own special education law. Some are equivalent to the federal law. Some may be less comprehensive than the federal law. But fortunately in Massachusetts, we are much more comprehensive than the federal law. So I don't know if that answered your question. If you're in Connecticut, you know, you have your own state laws. I would assume that Connecticut laws are also very comprehensive. I'm making an assumption, I don't know that. Okay.
All right. And I have another question on Facebook. Can a school begin an autism assessment?
Not without a parental consent.
Okay. And one more Facebook question. What if the school system decides that a child does not need an IEP, but their parents or REACH or their pediatrician disagrees? Is there a way to appeal the decision?
This is coming next in the next part of our several slides. We're addressing that in our slides. So instead of answering it now, I think we'll be much more comprehensive if we go through the slides, and you will hear the answer to that.
Super, thank you.
In regards to like the autism assessment, I wonder, and you have to understand, this subject is so vast. We could spend days on it. So we're just trying to give, you know, like your very basics. These are your rights. But often a school will pull, before they get in touch with you and say, hey, we think we should do some testing, they'll often pull together what's called a child study team. No?
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
yes.
disagreed with me.
No,
And you know what would happen then is that the study team would get together and say, what are you seeing around this child? And do you think they require additional support? That then hopefully they would contact you and say, we think we should do some testing. Any more to add on that, Marjorie?
Yes, but you don't have to say yes to a child study team. If you request an IEP evaluation, they have to do it by law. They have to.
You know, in a perfect world, it would happen that they would be talking and then they would be getting in touch with you, but it's not a perfect world.
Actually now. Okay.
Okay.
So we were talking about the IEP. Do you want to continue this portion, Gretchen, or
Well,
do you
you know
want
what?
me to
I've
take over?
taken a drink of water, so I could actually continue right now. if you'd
Okay.
like me.
Okay.
All right, so the vision statement, oh, and I can't see the slide. Parents should have ample input in developing the vision. Do not accept a blanket vision statement provided by the school. Oftentimes they'll come to the meeting with something already written, which is okay, but you, as the parent or guardian, you need to have input as well. Recent testing and evaluation results, measurable annual academic and functional goals so the student can make progress in the general curriculum. A goal must indicate how we will know that a student is making progress and how it will be measured. A service delivery grid that indicates the services to be provided, how often and where they will be delivered. Accommodations for standardized testing, appropriate placement for the student, and other additional information. So this is just a very quick rundown of what the IEP would look like. So after the IEP meeting, the school will send you the final document for the parent approval. You have 30 days to respond. And this is important. No services will begin until the school receives the signature page from the parent or guardian. So, yeah, you want to respond as quickly as possible. So, go ahead.
I just want to mention it's very important if you have other providers in your life or someone that you're working with to review the IEP with you, especially if they've been to the eligibility determination meeting, to make sure that everything is included that was talked about. Don't review an IEP and just sign it. That's my biggest words of wisdom. Really have someone go over it with you. Okay.
And if you don't have anyone in your life that can do that, you can find someone at the school that can go over it with you. Okay, so parents also have the right to accept, reject, or partially reject the IEP. Parents also must indicate whether they accept or reject the placement where the child will be educated. If you partially accept an IEP, you can ask that the approved services be started immediately while you continue to work out the rejected parts of the IEP. Personally, I think that this is one of the best ways to go, because let's get whatever can be started, let's get that in place and we can work out the rest later.
Do you want me to take over?
Sure.
Oh, no, I don't want to take it away from you.
No, I will allow that.
Okay. Now we're going to get into some of the questions that you answered or asked. If your child does not qualify for an IEP, the team must provide a thorough explanation at the meeting and provide written notice of the findings to the parents within 10 days of the meeting. The parent may reject the findings of the ineligibility and must send a letter explaining why they disagree within 30 days. If the parent, this is important, if the parent disagrees with the testing, they may request an independent evaluation, which is free if your child has free or reduced lunch, or maybe on a sliding scale based on your family income. This request may be made, another important thing, up to 16 months after the eligibility determination meeting. So if you're mulling it over and 5 months from now, you're thinking, you know, I really wasn't satisfied with that evaluation, you still have the right up to 16 months to request an independent evaluation. If you don't go that route, there are other options around this non-eligibility decision, which includes a mediation with the Bureau of Special Education Appeals, or actually appealing to the Bureau of Special Education Appeals. Those are two different things. Next slide.
Okay.
So if your child does not qualify for an IEP, they may be eligible for a 504 plan. And a 504 plan in IDEA, special ed, are very different in what they provide for students. They're two very different options. So let's talk about what's the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan. Okay. The 504 plan is based on Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and protects a person from discrimination across settings, across lifetime settings, actually, including school. You see examples of this everywhere, such as wheelchair ramps, accessible bathrooms, Braille type on elevators. These are what a 504 plan can address. In an educational setting, a 504 plan acknowledges that a child has a disability, and this disability can be supported through accommodations and not necessarily an IEP. So now the question becomes, what's a modification and what's an accommodation, which at times can be very confusing. An accommodation helps the students navigate their disability, again, such as a wheelchair ramp, and allows them access to the same materials as their peers, the same curriculum, the same materials that their peers are using. Accommodations can be, examples are preferential seating, extended time in assignments, highlighted text, short breaks, notes provided by the teacher. There are many, many accommodations. And again, they're not changing the curriculum. They're just letting the student have I would say, a better chance at accessing the curriculum. Oh, the dog is barking.
I'm sorry. I'll mute.
Okay. Life is not perfect. Okay. Now, a modification is different than an accommodation. A modification actually changes what the student is taught or expected to learn. For example, a student may be giving reading material. Let's say they're studying reading material, something in science. I can't even think of, the different kinds of compounds. I haven't taken science in 60 years. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But it changes what the student is taught. For example, a student may be reading material that is at a lower level, containing information in a more simplified manner. So if you have a child who is on an IEP and he's in 4th grade, but reading at a 1st grade reading level, the text and the materials that a student is studying from are at a 1st grade level. So it meets the students where they are at. Next.
Finish that slide. I got distracted by the dog.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
So what are the differences between, this is basic, what are the differences between a 504 and an IEP? A 504 does not need to be a written plan, but most often it is. A parent doesn't even have to sign a 504, but usually they do. I mean, that's most often the case. A 504 plan does not offer the same protections or accountability for goals, accommodations, or implementations as in an IEP. There's no goals, there's no benchmarks, there's no objectives, which you will see in a written goal on an IEP. A 504 does not offer disciplinary protection. And as we say, discipline is a whole nother topic in itself. It actually, there is a bit of protection. So if a child is acting out discipline-wise or suspended, can't be expelled because they're on a 504 and And they still have some protections. They're just not as guaranteed as in an IEP. And you could say, well, now we're in the process of evaluating the child for an IEP. So there are some disciplinary protections, but the whole topic of disciplinary issues is really for another training and is really best served by having an attorney give it, special ed attorney, because discipline gets very complicated and very dicey, especially if your child is charged with a felony, very complicated. So we just want to give you that information. Back to the 504. The student can receive services such as speech therapy or counseling. However, there is no requirement that a parent receive progress notes on these services. In an IEP, you'll get quarterly progress notes on how your child is doing. A 504 does not require transition planning, and that is planning for when the child leaves the school setting. That's not required of a 504.
Whoops, sorry, I went too fast.
That's all right, but that's just some basic information about what the differences are. And I hope that we're not going too fast. And you can always slow us down if we are.
Do you
I
want
have
me to take-
another question that
Okay.
came in via a text, and maybe you're going to answer this. But
Mhm.
do you have any tips for determining who at the school might be a good ally for the student's best interest and to help the family? And they went on to say, I know that sometimes there isn't anyone at the school who is an ally, but it seems worth seeing if there is.
So this is an interesting question because I think often what will happen is a teacher may pull you aside and say, you know, I can't say this, but maybe you should have your child tested or, you know, something like that. Anyone that has sort of gone out of the way to support you is a great ally. Oftentimes that might be, you know, a school social worker. I don't know. Do you have it? I don't think there's any written rule for that, except that, go ahead.
I was going to say a paraprofessional.
Right.
It might be a vice principal for all we know.
Right.
An ally, you know, we like our kids to identify who they feel comfortable with and who they connect with. An ally to me equals connection with someone that a student really feels comfortable with. And so usually kids may find the custodian is an ally, or the lady who works, or the man who works in the cafeteria as an ally. You usually can find an ally, and your child is perhaps one who can help you identify who that ally is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good point.
Yep. Did we answer the question to whoever posed it?
We don't
We'll find
know.
out.
Well,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Did you
Rules
want-
of engagement. This is Gretchen's favorite topic. So Gretchen,
Okay.
take it away.
So there's definitely, you know, there's the regulations and there's procedures, but there are also ways that we as parents need to engage with schools. It's changed a little bit since everything is Zoom now, but the basics are the same. So rules of engagement. Parents are full members of the IEP team and are the experts on their own child. However, be open to what school staff have to say, as they are the experts in education. Sometimes it's hard to accept what they're saying, but give them a chance, because oftentimes they're right. Make sure you treat others the way you want to be treated. At times, it can be hard to remain calm during an IEP meeting. remember that you have to leave your emotions at the door. Nothing will diminish your reputation more than losing your cool. And remember that we're all there for the benefit of your child. And regarding losing your cool, nothing will follow you around for 12 years in your child's schooling than your bad reputation. So it's just, you have got to be careful how you proceed.
And I want to just add that you really have to work at working collaboratively with the school, because if you're not moving, it could be 12 years or whatever, how many years, is it 16 years? Now I can't even do the math.
Yeah, it probably is. I couldn't do that
12
math either.
years. It's 12, whatever. You're going to have a working relationship unless you move with the school district. And so, I would often attend IEP meetings with families, and if I saw that they were getting heated, I would suggest, and the team would be fine with it, we need to take a 5-minute break. We would leave the room. The parent may cool off, and then be ready to go back in. I've been known to not really kick, but tap a parent under the table in their leg and say, get it together. They know that's a signal that they're going off course. We can't emphasize enough about, yes, I've cried at IEP meetings for my own children. That's a little bit different than losing your cool and using inappropriate language and swearing. We've seen that. And
Threatening, please don't threaten.
Walking out of the room saying, I've had it, I'm leaving. We really, really discourage that totally. So I interrupted you, Gretchen, and you can get back to your business.
I have no problem with that. So the next one, with Zoom is a little bit less important, but you want to make sure that you dress for success. You don't need to wear a suit, but you just need to dress neatly. Again, because we're often judged. I mean, we're judged enough as parents as it is. Try to do your best to just arrive neatly.
Well, we have seen parents come to meetings in pajamas, or pajama-like clothes, and
actually with Zoom, you probably could wear pajamas, but we try to discourage it. And don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions. The school district should be explaining the process as it happens. Schools tend to use their own jargon and acronyms. And if they're using words that you don't understand, ask them to explain themselves. You have a right to understand what is being told to you. And we, as parents, we didn't go to IEP class to understand this. We need to know. So don't be afraid. You're not being stupid. You don't know because you haven't been there yet. So don't be afraid to ask them to explain. Another point is that if English is not the parent's first language, the school district is required to provide written documents in the language, and they must provide an interpreter at the meeting.
There's other things I was gonna.
Did you want to add?
Yeah, I do want to add, because I had an experience today at an IEP meeting where both, there was jargon being used, and the parent, didn't know that she could interrupt the presenter and say, well, I wish I had it in front of me. I didn't even know what this was. So I stopped and I said, can you please explain what FP something letter is? I said, and then the mother said, oh yeah, I don't know what that means. And they were very willing to explain it. And I think it kind of gave them a little jolt into, like, we're speaking school, language, and we're not speaking so that everybody understands. And the other thing that for all the years that I've been working in this field, we have been trying to change the culture of going to a school meeting, and you'll meet Miss Smith, the speech pathologist, and you'll meet Joan Johnson, who is the school adjustment counselor, and you'll meet Sally Stoller, who is the classroom teacher. And then you're constantly referred to as mom and not Gretchen Eamon.
Or
And to
dad.
me, or dad, sorry, or well, dads usually get,
grandma.
my experience is dads are usually called by their name, and moms will be saying, and mom, what do you think? And mom, are you following what you're saying? And mom, do you have anything to add? I had a parent, very wise parent many years ago, look at the team and say, I never gave birth to you, meaning, why are you calling me mom? I'm not your mom. And being referred to by your first name, I feel contributes to being an equal member of the team, not just mom. It is a pet peeve that I've had for decades, and I don't see the culture changing around it unless someone speaks up or models, like I kept on modeling today. I was referring to the parent by her first name. And so that's a rule of engagement that
We
I,
need to add. We didn't
for the
put that on
school, that just, and I'm off on a little tangent about that, but it really bothers me. So you may want to mention at a meeting, my name is Marjorie.
there. Or you can even say, you can call me Marjorie.
You can
That
call me
makes sense.
Marjorie.
Right.
My parent many years ago was a little flip when she said, when did I give birth to you? Though I was like giggling behind my hand about it. Anyways, on to rules of engagement.
All right. So after the meeting, it's best practice to write a follow-up letter. You should send a thank you letter to the district. An email is okay. And again, going back to putting everything in writing, if it's not in writing, it essentially didn't happen. So your letter, you're going to want to thank them for the meeting and summarize your understanding of the decisions that were made. Make sure the letter states your understanding of which school staff will deliver the supports to your child. At the end of the letter, be sure to state that if you have misunderstood what was decided at the team meeting, to please contact you, and to please put a copy of this letter in your child's student file. Essentially, if they don't respond, the assumption is that you got it right. And this will be part of your paper trail should you need to go there at some point. And again, our number one rule, I guess, is to make sure all requests are in writing. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. This is the one that's very hard for me. Marjorie was my family support specialist. How many years ago? How many?
How many years ago?
20 years ago.
21.
21. Oh my gosh.
21 and a half.
Anyway, best practice is to have a binder where you keep all your correspondence and documents in an easily accessible place. But for busy, tired parents, it is very hard to do. And if you have a little ADHD, like I may myself, I do, what can I say? It's really hard to do that. So, but it's going to save you a lot of time and aggravation if you commit to the practice. Marjorie and I had a little bit of an argument over this particular point, because yes, best practice is put it in a 3-ring binder with different sections. But at the very least, if you can get it into a folder, you're doing okay. Okay, so if you don't agree with the outcome for a team meeting, we refer you back to slide 23. Marjorie, why did we put this number 8 here? Oh, does it go on? Oh, no, it doesn't go on.
No. It tells you if you don't, again, if you don't agree with the outcome of the meeting, and you know, we have slide number 23. I don't know if you want to fling back to that, Gretchen.
Okay. I don't know where slide 23 is.
You
They're not
can find
numbered.
it.
Let's see. That would be, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, you'll find it. I think so after we talked about the IEP.
Is this it where they have the right to?
Yes.
Okay.
And this again is just a very simplified explanation. We're not going into great detail because this is basic information that we wanted to get across to you within an hour. So having said that, and we go back to the next slides.
Sorry. Can we actually? Wow.
And
Did we go too fast?
No, because then we're just going to talk a little bit about our additional resources, and then we're going to have Crystal talk. So no.
Okay. So, and everyone will have access to these slides. Rachel, I don't know how we decided to do that, if people will contact you by email, but,
We can send them to everyone who registered.
all right, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so some of the additional resources are the Disability Law Center, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Problem Resolution System. That's where you, if you were to want to file a complaint, that's how you would do it. Really, the best way to find out about these places is to go online. Mass Advocates for Children, they're a great resource. So Office of Civil Rights, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, you can also file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. Federation for Children with Special Needs, they're well-versed in all types of disabilities and advocacy. The Bureau of Special Education Appeals, Massachusetts Bar Association can offer a lawyer referral service. Most of us aren't fortunate enough to be able to afford a lawyer, but let's see. If you have further questions or concerns regarding your child's mental health, you can please feel free to join us at a support group or an educational consultation time. I've got that in the next slide. Our contact information is also listed below. Where you can see us at children'semotionalhealth.org or like us or follow us on Facebook at Children's Champions. And here's our support group information. I wonder if this would be a good time to ask Crystal to share a little bit of her story.
Well, wait a minute. Where's the Thursday date?
Oh, we do have a Spanish group, and it's right there. I couldn't fit it all on one page.
And before we have Crystal say anything, I just want to say that our program, which is funded exclusively by the Department of Mental Health, we work with families whose children have mental health needs, depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, ADHD, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. If your child has autism, we would send you to another state agency, DDS. If your child has other impairments, there are other organizations that provide support and services to you. Our organization, the Support Network, again, works with children and parents and families whose children have mental health needs. Now, oftentimes there will be a combination of needs, but if there is a mental health need there, we can work with you. that doesn't mean you can't ask us questions about general educational advocacy questions, but we're not able to really work with you directly, support you at an IEP meeting or anything like that. I don't want to say we're the experts, but we have this reputation of being the experts in children's mental health. And especially around developing services in schools around children's mental health. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think we didn't really talk about that at the beginning. And I do want to say that we do pride ourselves in never leaving a parent hanging. So if somebody calls me and they have a child, with some sort of physical disorder, I'm going to help them find resources and somebody to send them to. Even though our program may not be the right program for them. Being a parent left hanging is the worst experience ever. And so we really want to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay.
Okay.
And I just have a quick question for you about the slides. So may we post them on the GCTV website?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
is that okay? And then also on the Communities That Care or 4SC Coalition websites?
I think as long as we're credited.
As long as we're credited.
Okay, thank you.
And copyrighted.
Our goal, we really want to make sure that people have information. So
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Crystal, as our parent on our presentation, do you want to say some words, Crystal, about your experience now?
Yeah. So first, I want to tell you, you're going to cry. And it's okay. You will have tears of defeat and tears of joy. I left the meeting today in tears. So it does happen. I like to start every meeting off by saying that I'm not just the parent sitting at this table, that I am a part of my child's team, and I am my child's biggest advocate. I have 2 children, both on IEPs. One is very black and white. It's been in place for years, and it's been easy. But my youngest, it's not so simple, and I've never imagined I'd have to fight so hard for what he needs. And it's hard and emotional. Ask questions. If you don't understand, just keep asking until you do. There is no dumb question when it comes to your children. You know them better than anybody else. There are so many resources out there. You and your child have rights. And I recommend when something doesn't seem right, you need to make sure you have that paper trail. Don't call. It has to be in writing. Email. I do everything by email. I know we talked about it, but you can deny an IEP, you can partially, you can accept it. It is a legally binding document once you sign it, and it does need to be followed. And it is beneficial to ask the team if you can have a book back and forth of how your child is doing with everything, so you can continue to follow through at home with it. I have found that the teachers and the service providers are standing by your side. They are there for you. They will support you. I've struggled mostly with the directors, and sometimes, yes, it is out of their hands completely. There's just not much at a certain point, but there are resources out there. There are school liaisons, advocates that can help you, and you can sometimes find them at no cost to you. As a peer ambassador, that's one of the things that I do is help parents find those resources, as well as use it myself. I could go on and on, but I do want to leave you with this, is to remember to take care of yourself. We often get very caught up in our children and what we're doing that we forget to, and you're not alone.
That's such a good point. We always tell parents, it's the old, it's a cliche now, but putting the, can you not hear me? Putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. And when you're doing well, your children will begin to do well.
Mhm.
It's when you're not doing well that they will also not do well. All right. I know we had some other questions that were sent in. I don't know.
Are there any more questions on Facebook or YouTube? I have another question that came from YouTube. Does this all apply to private and charter schools as well?
Ooh,
Good question.
So private schools run by their own rules. But a charter
Totally.
school is absolutely a public school, and they are supposed to be following the same rules and regulations as any other public school. I often have parents ask me if they should send their child like to a private school. And I'm not going to say that, never send your child to a private school, but especially for children that have social emotional challenges, it's often not tolerated in those types of environments. And it's just another heartbreak for you and your child to go through. Anything else to add on that, Marjorie?
No. And at times we also find in charter schools, they may not have the same amount of supports and services that your child needs on their IEP. Yes, they have special ed and special ed teachers, et cetera. But at times, if your child really has significant needs, there may not be enough at that charter school. And there may be. But again, private schools.
Think very carefully before we go there.
My oldest, he was actually at a private school when we had his testing done, and we chose to put him in public schooling because it was too much. I mean, we were able to take him to his services, but I had to pick him up every day and go back and forth, and he was ultimately missing more school because of it.
It's very hard. I mean, it's hard having a child with challenges to begin with. And then if you're trying to work and bring your child to all these appointments, it can be really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I just wanted to share that somebody sent in a comment thanking Crystal, and I wanted to put that out to everybody. So thanks, Crystal.
You're
Yes,
welcome. Thank you.
Crystal. It's always good to hear from parents.
There was a question on this question sheet about what are the downsides to having an IEP. And I don't know if people want to hear our thoughts on that.
I think it's a good question.
I think it is a good question. And Gretchen, do you have that in front of you?
I do.
You want to,
right. So,
want to say something about that?
Yeah. One of so the question was, are there downsides to having an IEP, such as the stigma? And there certainly can be downsides. The child might feel different or stupid, and there can be stigma associated with it. However, the school is bound by confidentiality rules, and nobody should really know that your child, whether they're on an IEP or not. We all know, though, that if you go on the short yellow bus, that something is different about you. But I also think you need to know that children are already feeling differently. If they're struggling with learning, they're struggling with any other type of challenge, behavioral, emotional, they already feel different. So personally, I feel like giving them the services that they need can really help them to fit in a little bit more. I have all these notes written. I have to, let's see. You want to make sure that everyone in the child's life push the envelope of learning by having high expectations. A child on an IEP can reach great heights, but only if they're believed in, and it should be reflected in their IEP. Let's see. Again, the benefits far outweigh the downsides.
You mentioned the bullying piece.
Yeah, so if a child is being bullied because of their learning challenges, well, you know, regardless of whether they're on an IEP or not, the school is required to respond to that. So you should definitely make a report to the school immediately. Now, as your child gets older, they're going to suddenly not stop telling you about these things. They're not going to want you to run in there and sort of defend them. But especially when they're little, let's nip it in the bud. We recommend that you review the school's bullying policy and make sure the steps are being followed by the school. Schools are obligated, again, to protect the child that it's experiencing bullying. They're also obligated to help the bully. There's something going on with children that bully. And I think that if parents can learn one thing tonight, it's that being on an IEP is not a reflection of how smart a child is. Your child can be brilliant and be on an IEP. We are all different learners, and it's up to the adults around you to figure out how to help you access that curriculum. We have to stop the stigma, right? We are all different learners. And I know that like in earlier grades, it is sometimes talked about, you know, about we all learn differently, and that Johnny needs this to succeed, and that you need this to succeed, and that some kids need help making friends. And what can we all do as a class to help this child make friends? And I just want to say that you can put everything in place, but if you are not feeling part of a community, it's going to be very difficult for your child to succeed. And that's how we stop the stigma. It is a school community and everybody belongs. I'm getting on my soapbox. I'm going to cry now.
No, you're not on your soapbox. So, the thing is, the question being, what are the downsides? And I just want to say, if your child is in need and needs support and help and meets the criteria for special ed, it's a parent's choice which way to go, but I think they may suffer more not being able to access the curriculum if they're getting in constant disciplinary difficulty, if some interventions and supports are not put in place for them. So, stigma, I think, is you said, Gretchen, is the biggest downside. But I certainly wouldn't want to deprive my child of additional supports if they need them. That's how I feel. Personal perspective.
There was also another question about what should you not say at an IEP meeting? And I don't know if you had a chance to look at this one, Marjorie, but in my mind, I would say there aren't too many things that I wouldn't say at an IEP meeting, except like no threats, no swears. I think you always have to be careful about how much of your personal life you want to share at a meeting. That can sometimes come back to bite you.
Not threaten with a lawyer. You'll be hearing
Right.
from my attorney.
Right, right.
Um,
And don't bring personal conflict into it. We all know that there are sometimes those teachers that just are rubbing you the wrong way, or you feel are treating your child unfairly. But the IEP meeting is not the place to be bringing that up. Let's see. You don't have to like them, but you got to work with them.
the other thing that is not exactly related to this that we didn't mention is about compromise with the school district. That we go in with all of our wants for our child, all what we think our child may need. Yes, he needs to have a one-on-one, he needs to have he needs to have, a list of what you want for your child. Sometimes they're not feasible requests. Sometimes the child may not really need that. And at times you may have to compromise with the school. You may not, I hate to use the word win. You're not going to win on every point or everything that you are asking for. And so that builds a more collaborative relationship, because as we talked earlier about building collaborative relationships, how do we build those collaborative relationships with a school? And that is one piece of it. So you do have to compromise. You're never going to get everything that you want. In the perfect world, maybe, but it's an imperfect world right now.
Let's see.
Any other questions? I know that we made this a really brief overview.
There was one, I'm sorry, there was one question about anything more regarding social justice aspects of special education. And I think it's important for people to understand, well, there's a lot, first of all, that we all can learn about social justice in special education. But there's also a lot we do know. And in doing my research, in 1968, the Kerner Commission indicated that we were heading towards two societies, one Black and one white, separate and unequal. In the 70s, there were some great improvements and outcomes for children of color. But in the 80s, the federal budget cuts pushed those gains back. It's important to know that special education has never been fully funded. It came to being in 1975. It has never been fully funded. The federal government was supposed to fund special education at 40%, but in 2017, only 14.6% was being funded. As poor children, minorities, and children of color, as a result, children with disabilities are not getting their needs met, and this is worse for children that are minorities and children of color. And until those in charge decide that all children are worth fighting for, our educational system will continue to fail those that are most vulnerable. And so my thoughts are, so what can we do? We all need to become educated, and we help others by talking about these things. We spread the word, we talk to legislators, and we vote. And we need to really vote for people that value education. It's not just children in special education now. Our schools are being asked to do more and more and more with less. And it's unfair to all children. It's just, it's a very sad state that our schools are in. And I got off on a tangent a little bit.
No, you didn't, because the other tangent that we might want to get off on briefly is, children during this pandemic are struggling and have
Ah.
been struggling, you know, not only
Absolutely.
academically, but mental health wise, and the needs are huge. And we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it in mental health clinics. We're seeing it in referrals to our programs. We're seeing it for long waits and for hospital beds. We're, you know, not to sound dramatic, we're in a pretty much a crisis state with our kids and their mental health. And
Absolutely.
we've always felt that, you know, before kids can make sound academic progress, we really need to address their mental health needs. And I mean, I heard a statistic today, and now I can't remember it. I should have written it down, but the number of children who are in emergency rooms because of their mental health needs, suicide threats, bullying, and physical bullying has increased exponentially. We are, you know, in a crisis, and we don't have the supports and services to fully support our children. And I don't mean to end on a downer, but that's the reality of what's going on right now. Okay, now we have to say something.
I know, we have to
It's a
think of
little more
something that's,
uplifting.
yes. Well, I'll go back to community building, community building, community building. If your child belongs, that's half the battle right there. And if you see a parent that's struggling with their child, reach out. I know it's hard, but you know, you might be able to help. And I don't know, we should laugh. I feel like we need to laugh.
Okay, what are we going to laugh about? That it's going to be 60 degrees on whatever day? What day is it going to be 60 degrees? Saturday, Friday?
I don't know. Yeah,
We're all going to go to the
Saturday, I think.
beach. So unless there's any more questions or any more comments,
Yeah.
we're glad to answer anything. We're an open book. It's not. So shall we end here?
Well, I noticed Rachel is unmuted.
Oh, I was just going to thank all of you. I think we don't have any more questions, at least not on Facebook or YouTube. But I wanted to thank all of you for coming and presenting. And Crystal, thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience. And Gretchen and Marjorie, we really appreciate it. And we will make sure that those slides get posted. And this will be rebroadcast on Saturday morning as well.
Do you know what time, perchance?
Saturday morning, is it 11, Nick? Yes, Saturday morning at 11 o'clock.
Very good. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And as we said again, this was just a basic overview. If there's any more specific information that you're looking for, or something that you want us to elaborate on, because it could be a whole day actual workshop, you know, we'd be happy to continue to work with you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Well-
you. Bye-bye.